Good morning, Trumptopia. I am the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. This is your daily dose of my madness, opinion, and collaborative thought process. I'm not trying to tell you what to believe. I'm trying to invite you to think it through with me. And thank you for joining me. Today's episode is going to be ad hoc, raw, real, unscripted as always, friends, because that's what I am all about. Of course, to kick it off, I'd like to take a moment and give a shout out to everybody in New Zealand, Canada, Spain, Switzerland, Germany, Mexico, Malta, the UK, and of course, right here at home in Trumptopia, the US of A, who's tuning in and downloading my podcast series. Namaste and thank you, my friends. And also, I really want to take a moment and highlight and give a super wicked strong shout out to everybody lumped into this category on the analytics. Other. I don't know who you are, but you're 3.61% of my audience, which I guess technically is a larger percentage of the total than, half the list. Because the way it's broken up, like the top three, Trumptopia, Brextopia, and I wouldn't know what kind of topia Malta's going through, but I do know a small little theater company out there, randomly. Like, I've never been, but I know somebody that runs the theater company vis-a-vis the social webs. Shout out to them. I don't know if that's the folks listening, but if it is, hello. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for downloading my crazy. But the rest of the countries, like Malta is at the 12.25% of my audience limit. So 3 people in Malta are really driving my top tier of download numbers, which is, I'm grateful. Thanks a lot. And everybody else, no offense to everybody, it's less than 4%. So 3% for other is pretty strong showing. Now over here on the other on this different list, by the way, I'm giving you a behind the scenes honest peek at sort of slightly vague versions of my analytics numbers for this very show. I totally kicked it off like it was Trumptopia, and it's totally supposed to be Zencast, isn't it? Yeah, I'm having one of those mornings. But I digress. My coffee's just kicking in. In fact, I haven't even sipped it yet. And I tried to get it going as humanly quickly as possible immediately upon waking up today, because today is, I don't even know what day, Tuesday, February 18th. And Tuesday is supposed to be Tarot Day, not podcast day. I digress. On this other list, on this list of city breakdown, audience listenership, because it's not viewership, but viewership sounds better than listenership. So by city, other at the bottom of the list with the B is the largest percentage of everything on the list, right? At 49.8%. So, round of applause and many thank yous to all those cities, whoever you are. And also, a sincere and honest hello and namaste to everybody in Winston-Salem, in Golden, Colorado, in Casey, South Carolina, Gilbert, Arizona, Wentzville, Missouri, Montana, Mississippi. I forget which one MO is. Forgive me. I'm not from around these parts. Everyone out there in Barcelona, Spain, que onda? Actually, that was Mexican City slang, not Barcelona slang. I apologize. Geneva, Switzerland, Nicosia, Cyprus, and Birkirkara, Malta. And please forgive me for any and all instances of butchering a person's or a place's name. And then, of course, good old San Jose, California, right here in the good old U.S. of A. It's funny that 20% of my downloads go to that city. Don't know why. Guess a lot of people in San Jose are down with the transperlative, transformative, trans-dimensional approach that I take to this project. But cheers, salute, welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. That opening blast of unusually bizarro electronica music was a bit of my own alter ego, one of my many alter egos, DJ Z, or as I prefer it, although I don't spell it out this way, but like if you're British or English or one of the, you know, of empire of old types, you'll understand that Zedd can be like just the letter Z and doesn't have to have the E and the D in it, right? So it's like DJ Zedd is how it's said, but it's spelled DJ Z because that's all you see. I just made that up. Gonna brand that shit. Don't steal it. It's mine. But that bit of music, that was DJ Zedd and Trap 111. An experimental track from one of his earliest album triptychs, the early years, 1, 2, 3. Gonna let you hear the whole track a little later, friends. But I'm gonna also kind of like, shake off this DJ radio show host personality and get a little serious. Now that we've got all the pleasantries over with. But actually, that's not true. I wanted to talk about one last thing with you guys as an audience, as my virtual. You welcome me into your earbud sacred space of inside your skull with my thought candy. I want to honor that, right? Like, I hope I haven't forced you to think thoughts that hurt your brain. And if I ever have, I sincerely, genuinely apologize. But, no pain, no gain. Growth hurts. Also, I don't ever mean to be rude, right? And if and when I ever actually travel back in time for reals to like remaster the show in real time, back in time, in the other dimension in which I made it, I will, because this show is coming to you live from a dimension you would call the future. Sorry for that radio style vomit, but had to plug it in there because I got it. If I capture it, then I can loop it later and like use it anywhere, right? Coming to you live from a dimension you'd call the future. Coming to you live. Closing brackets. Right. I wanted to talk about for reals, and like in a serious. We are on an adventure together, and it's a product, right? Like, that's how our world works now. I have to hustle and make a product. And so far, friends, I've been giving it to you completely free, and I haven't been participating in any monetization programs. So any advertising or advertisements that you may or may not encounter as you engage with my podcast, know this. From its inception till today, in real time, in real life, fact-checking, Tuesday, February 18th, 9:30, 1 a.m. Pacific Time. As of this recording now, at that clock hour time of your geosynchronous local schedule plan, I have not earned one red cent off of my own hard work of making this podcast available. And, making evil, nefarious hand gestures and wiggling my fingers like the anti-hero proto-villain that I am, or may not be, because I'm not, because that's a work of fiction. Right? This is all performance art, but also true, but also performance art. Taking a look at my actual analytics And given the current real-life circumstances that I confront, which, by the way, folks, and I'm not trying to be a sob story here, right? Everyone's got their GoFundMe page to manage, and times are tough. And I haven't even launched mine yet, but I'm probably going down that route for a bunch of reasons. Not the least of which being that I no longer have access to any kind of vehicle, which is a big long sob story. I may try to fictionalize. Actually, I think I might already have fictionalized and put into my literature, so I don't want to like spoiler anybody right now. Oh yeah, asterisk, red pin. The Whitepad account is active again after a long hiatus. I think I'm actually going to crank out a few chapters. And once again, jump on the New Year's resolution treadmill of, can I do one chapter every other week for the whole year? Last year it was going to be like one upload a week, even if it was just like half a page, right? And that fell apart. I couldn't do it. Couldn't be bothered. And it's my own, like, I want to be discovered, like 50 Shades of Grey was, although I got to stop making that reference because people start thinking that my books are like 50 Shades of Grey, and they are a little bit, but they're not. They're much less 50 Shades of Grey than 50 Shades of Grey is. No offense to anybody who likes that book. No offense to the lady who wrote it. Just not my actual can of worms. It whole complicated story there. It gets into like, literary theory and personal preference theory. But I digress. The analytics thing I want to talk to you about. And thanks for sticking with me, folks. I know my brain's a big noodle mess. But if you watch The Good Place, you might understand why. Especially if you've gotten towards the end of season 3 and you get to Jeremy Bearimy. If you understand Jeremy Bearimy, then you understand how, approximately, vis-a-vis a fictional television Planet Dirt show. I'm sorry, I'm on Planet Earth. Am I on Planet Earth or am I on Planet Dirt? It gets confusing because I hop back and forth. But you know what I'm saying, right? The analytics. My last 30 days are an interesting roller coaster tycoon kind of like silhouette of peaks and valleys. But when I take the date window control calendar thingy, and I can do a cool thing with my analytics because I, pay for it. Produced by me. I can go all the way back to a year ago today, last year. So February 18th, 2019. An interesting thing happens, right? I get a month by month block chart. Right now, it's the axes are relative to the numbers themselves, obviously, and the time length. So the time length is going to be February to February. And I was showing this to a collaborator friend of mine, an associate, let us say, who prefers to remain anonymous, who's been very, very busy with their own art projects. And with whom I have a long history of competitively describing art projects that we're trying to seduce each other into, and I mean that platonically, into wanting to collaborate with each other about, and then we never do anything together. And he's definitely Broheim status, and I mean that, non-pejoratively, and if there's any other unknown negative associations to the use of that word, non-inclusive of those. This dude's a brother of mine, right? Maybe literally. I'm trying to keep it anonymous, but I may be speaking about my sibling. I may edit that out later. He hasn't agreed to be on the show yet, which is why I'm being hinky. I'm just being weird. Not kinky, I said hinky, which I shouldn't reference. It's a 50s reference. It's just, cut that out. Anyways, I was actually talking to my brother, who's a brilliant performer and powerhouse vociferous writer that I always kind of assumed would be my curse. I've got the inverse. I have too many ideas and I can never write enough pages per minute, per day, per week, per year, ever. Even if I was writing fluidly on a week-to-week basis, it still wouldn't be enough. But my brother's achieved a huge tome. And he mocked me because I did totally reference his book. at some point in the podcast, and I did it on a whim, bro. And it wasn't like Bro Jams. It wasn't. I didn't. No disrespect. It was like it popped in my head, and I didn't have any of your media like in front of me. Like I didn't have a copy of your book. I didn't have your Facebook page. I didn't have your Twitter. Nothing. Right? Like I didn't have my due diligence because I don't have staff. Because I don't have anybody who produces the show yet. Knock on wood. Maybe in year 6, it'll finally come through, and someone's going to be like, "But of course, I'll buy this without interrupting how you create it, and just pay you to make it." Well, that may be closer than it seems, right? Because, as I was about to suggest, the number trends are interesting. And mind you, make fun of me all you want if there's any haters listening. Like, I know these are like squishy, squashy, little tiny pathetic numbers. Although it's quite cool to be able to say that my podcast is listened to absolutely factually for certain in more than 10 to 15 countries around the womb. I like to call it the womb, not the planet, or the egg, because it's really kind of more that than it is any of you flat shape, crazy paradigm models. But let's not get into that argument right now. If you're new and you're trying to follow along, just buckle your seatbelt and brace yourself. It just gets crazier, but you get used to it, and then it all makes sense. My numbers and the trends that it indicates, and why I'm talking to you about it, dear audience. From February to February, it's a double ramp of it's an interesting up and down. And the really fascinating part is when you look, you like hover over each bar and you get totals. Now this number is skewed because it's only half of February, right? I'm only getting 18th over. But if I got the whole month, I think it was closer to 60. But for February, it says 46 downloads. For March of last year, 139 downloads. That's the whole month. For April of last year, 302 downloads. For May, 365. For June, 503. For July, 631. Now, that's pretty bullish growth at scale, right? Like if you whether it's 631 and it's just that's it, 631 individual, or if you scale it up and you say the same exact numbers but at the hundreds of thousands, that's strong growth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months of solid growth in unique downloads per month. And I was, as you know, dear audience, if you've been following along this entire time, doing it not even approaching almost daily. It was barely almost weekly. It was at times, well, for that run of months, I'm fairly certain I got a minimum of 2 episodes in each month. Had to have been, right? And I can go back and like crunch my own numbers or pay for a bigger package, which I currently will not choose to afford, to get more detail on that in terms of the, what the platform will show me. But what I'm pointing out here is that's real and not made up, right? For a show, the very first comment I ever, like live feedback in real time that I got on Facebook from someone that really loved to engage with me about issues and topics in the online personality way that I do, and was very argumentative and very contra my position, even though we had lots of things in agreement. He ultimately would go off on an interesting tangent and argue against some one thing, and then use that one thing to dismiss the whole of my thesis without ever hearing the whole of my thesis. And while, yes, one chunk of very flawed data should ruin a whole article, it doesn't mean that the whole article should get lit on fire and, burnt and never allowed to be explored again, right? It means you need to review the chunk that was wonky and didn't and was debunkable and didn't support your theory, and then to retool the whole process, retool your whole theory to see where you can evolve the theory to. I think. Anyways, this guy was very contentious and very contemplative, savvy guy. We're now on much better terms, I believe, I think. Or he just got tired of talking to me and just pretends to be nice to me. I don't know. You can never tell, right? He might be, a robot from the future monitoring my progress as a robot from the future sent here to warn humanity about the robots from the future. I don't know. There's a lot of paranoia involved sometimes if I go down too many loops of that regard. But he said, after sampling very, very, very early episodes, it might even be some content that's no longer up, because I took a lot of things down when I thought about rebooting it, but didn't think about how long it would take me to put them back up. So then did a different process. Anyways, he said, good luck finding an audience. Okay. It was meant as a burn, as a diss, and as a diss motivator, right? Like as a, you might as well give up. Like, you should stop doing what you're doing, bro. Like, no one wants to hear this. I'm like, okay, no one wants to hear this. Why is it growing now after 3 years of effort? Because it takes that long, right? It takes that long to land on ears that will keep listening. And then those people know people who might also want to keep listening. And it takes that long for anybody who's creating content and shaping their voice, not a narrative, but the way in which they share their thoughts, to really kind of get decent at it and get better at it, right? So here I am. And the point is, folks, not to go on for too long, 2020, I think, is the year that I want to try and not only recreate that and leverage it up a notch so that that those numbers are at least half again, if not twice or 3 times what they were last year as we ramped up into the summer, but that they continue going, right? Once I break multiple thousands of downloads per month, then, okay, let's put it as an if-then statement. Because this is something I'm not taking for granted, and I'm not I don't think I'm being naive or foolish about. But if I can break multiple thousands of downloads as a steady, small growth plateau, this is regular, multiple thousands of listeners plus a couple of more each month download the podcast, and I'm consistently doing 3 to 6 episodes a week of various lengths, then I can, theoretically, monetize this podcast in that way where it's like, yeah, you're going to have to listen to this or skip through or stare at some ads or not stare at them, and that sucks, but I do it for the freemium shows and games, and everybody does it for the freemium content that we want to consume. And if you want to consume my freemium content and help me do it full time, become the job that I actually do, then that's an easy passive aggressive. Some people might stop listening, but more people might start seeing it because the system itself will propagate it more because I'm playing in that new level of the way that they've commodified and marketified this platform and this whole process, right? And if you guys, and I'm speaking to you, whoever you are, that keeps downloading, whenever you get around to listening to this, if that's something you're like, well, fuck you, dude, I'm never going to listen to your show again, please reconsider. Because, if you knew the details of my life, you'd realize this would be your good deed for a year, because you might just be saving my life in a figurative and also slightly literal way, if I may. Oh, and this is ancillary, and I haven't really talked about this much on the show before, but this is real, right? Setting aside the play acting and the role play for the weird hyper collaborative with myself and others performance art process of developing my own fictional content. Let me get something out, right? July of last year, 631 downloads, because I was getting into the swing of it, I think, if I seem to recall. August and September dramatically plummet in numbers. August, 253. September, 176. And the one thing that happened in that time frame in my real life was that I got rear-ended. Coming home from my delightful but ever increasingly inadequate day job, survival job, which I'm not judging on the merits of itself or the people involved, but rather the economy around it has forever, since I started working there, made what was once great pay into less than adequate pay. Because inflation, this made up thing that makes everything more expensive every other year, just keep inflating and for no fucking reason other than people make more money. Well, the profiteers make more money. I digress. I got rear-ended by somebody, bless their heart, that I hold no grudges against and that I've done a lot of work already and will continue to do of, like, spiritually speaking, like, forgiving, right? Like, that dude, I have already forgiven and will continue to extend my forgiveness no matter what emotion I might be feeling about the fact that he endangered his life and my life in a way that I know all too well. This is a skeleton that's not very hidden in a closet for me. Like, in real life, I flirted with the same problem. And we can do a whole special deep dive episode on that. But I'm going to put a pin in it for now, because I didn't want, this is not about sob storying you guys into what I would hope is an uplifting bit of progress artistically. But that incident, getting rear-ended by a drunk driver, who hopefully, I pray every day, literally, and also like figuratively, and especially right now in the moment that I'm thinking about it, and it occurs to me that I hope learned his lesson in a better and harder and more efficient way than I've seen myself and others who had a problem with drinking alcohol and needing to get around. Many people aren't learning the lesson, didn't learn their lesson until it was too late, et cetera, et cetera. I hope he's learning his lesson, in a way that's full of grace and is healing his life and is healing those around him that he may have been negatively impacting with his choices. Too often, whatever the issue is, whether it's that or it's something else a little more benign and less marginalizing in society, we beat our faces into the meat grinder, don't we? Or the brick wall, right? We just beat our faces into the brick wall of learn this lesson and stop doing that. And it's hard on us and each other and ourselves and our relationship with that which we call the divine. But I digress. One of the ramifications or implications or what's another good word for it? Not results, perhaps, that I can't really blame him for. It's not like I can. There's a form that I filled out about, it was part of he went to court and, he was arrested and all that, the whole typical embarrassing thing. And I'm not doing this to call that guy out. I felt horrible for that guy in that moment, having been there and done that, right? And I'm upfront about it. There's no point in pretending otherwise. It's hard and shame-filling as a verb. Like, it fills you with shame to be doing that, to be, to have your whole life, stopped that way by your own choices and to suffer the consequences. One of the consequences on my end, thank God I was not injured in that moment. I had no broken bones, no whiplash, no nothing, right? I have no anger, I have no reason to sue him. I was literally driving home from the last real day of work at my theater gig and not expecting to work for a couple of weeks. So it's not like I could even sue him for lost in wages, because I had sort of planned to hunker down and do nothing for that period of time until I absolutely had to try and pick up a gig as theater in general was starting back up again. And at that point, I was hoping to maybe pick up a gig at a new theater. Anyways, I'm rambling, right? I'm going in spirals. Spirit is moving me to talk about details that I did not anticipate talking about. I was derailed creatively. I was derailed, right? I wasn't hurt or physically injured. Thank the powers that be. Thank your favorite insert name here for your divinity. And to this day, I mean, ironically, I'm currently going through some back problems, but I honestly do not believe that they're related. I mean, everything's connected, right? And the accident certainly probably didn't help, but I'm not going to sue the guy over it because my back was pretty fucked up long before that accident, and it's not any worse. I'm just going through a regularly scheduled episode of back dysfunctionality. But more importantly, I was artistically derailed. The numbers plummet because I couldn't record. I had nothing to say, or I wasn't doing it well, and it was a feedback loop of doing it less and less. And however many I put out, I don't even think I did any in August. And if I did any in September, that helped prevent September from being an even lower number. But August dropped down to 253 downloads. And I interpret that rather to be like follow through downloads of new people that were joining during this growth spurt in the analytical, in the download numbers. September, 176 downloads. Finally, right around then, things change. I had enough opportunity to cocoon and process and deal with myself and the situation. And I started trying to get back into it, right? I put out a couple of things in October and November, and those numbers popped right back up. 473 downloads in October, 745 in November, which currently I believe stands at like my year to date max best number. And then December, I didn't do much because of good reasons. I was super busy working a really great and sort of hallmark Horizon edition, like sunset edition of a beautiful, beautiful tradition production. It's like it's an epic, institutional, it's almost legendary in the local, theater nerd community. And it was a deep, deep theater blessing to be able to work it. Much love and nostalgia to that production. And I got to work that show, and that kept me very busy. So I did fewer episodes, and then in my real life, family just came in and invaded, right, my space, and that was great, and it was challenging, and I'll probably do a whole episode, and I just need to come up with a cool title, which I think I might have to call it Mi Familia something something, and give it a cool Spanglish name, because that special segment is going to have to be a special Spanglish segment, because there's no way that I can do like a memoirs of my family life with lessons fought hard and learned, and and mistakes made and all that kind of stuff. And really, I've been contemplating this for a long time, dear friends and audience, because I think, I find that while I get impassioned on many of these segments, I've yet to found an entree to really be more deeply authentic and artistically bare my soul. But I've also been afraid of it, right? It's always intimidating to try to be artful and sincere and speak in sort of, these are my memoirs, kind of fashion about family, because family might get upset, family might judge, family might be offended, family might not like the take on things. I wouldn't, and also your own inner critic, right? What would you talk about? What would you not talk about? But also, there's a lot of love there to preemptively assuage any false thoughts about that. It's not like I would be like a rage ball about, there's a lot of stand-up comedy I could probably, and then try to say it's fictional that I could work with, but ultimately, right, what are we doing here if not trying to figure out how to deal and through it all the hard, for better or worse, through thick and thin, right? I digress. A really challenging invasion for the season happened in my household, and I was like, I'm not even going to try. And I think I snuck in a couple of things somewhere in there, either offline draft recordings or something. But okay, so that dropped down to 154. January, I kind of just went, it's my birthday month, I'm going to do it half-ass and not worry about it. 414. That might be a sacred number, 414. And that number's locked in place, right? So that's not going to change. I have to look up that number, see if there's any meaning to that. And then February, now we still got 2 weeks left. It's at 380. And here it is, folks. Dear listeners, dear friends of the show, dear robots from the past and or future and or sideways dimensions that are monitoring the show, pretending to be humans. I cannot legally ask you to listen to my show more. I cannot legally ask you to promote the show. I guess? I don't know. Or can I? I don't know. I forget. It's confusing. Multiple dimension dementia, right? I have tried to do something like this in multiple time frames, in multiple settings, multiple times. Wherever you're listening, check your local listings and your local regulations. And if it's not illegal for me to be like, hey bro, if you haven't downloaded the whole show and all the episodes, set your podcaster to auto download, please. Also, if you haven't refreshed the podcast, do it, because I have already kind of done a bit of a trial run, gloss over pass on that updrafting project, and I'm going to try to triple down right now in the last week of February before March. March is a threshold where I might have to do radical other things besides podcasting all day to survive. But I digress. It isn't, life and death until it is. And it isn't it always? But here's the big thing, right? That I do. No one posts anywhere. People on my Facebook are making lots of interesting comments that makes me wonder if some of them are listening to my show. But on Sprecher.com, I don't see any comments. And that's fine. I'm not complaining. But as always, friends, you're more than welcome. Share your thoughts and questions. This isn't just a plug for that. I'm literally entertaining in my real life the possibility that all the, quote, signs, if you believe in being aware of and seeking out naturally occurring signs, seem to be pointing to, walk off the cliff, bro. If your dream is to go professional and become, a radio personality, DJ host for the spiritual cannabis and ally community, then go. Do it now. And monetize this shit so that it pays for you to be able to do it full time because it's being offered to you. And here are some of the signs. The trending numbers for the podcast itself. And these are limited to just the Almost Daily Zencast. And don't, my total number for just the Daily Zencast. Oh no, sorry. This is my total downloads for the whole account, if I'm not mistaken, are at 12,501. And I think the total numbers for the Almost Daily Zencast and its subsegments as a discrete product on the Sprecher platform on its own individual RSS feed, which, by the way, and I don't have this page open yet, I should, is very conveniently available at many podcasty thingies near you. Where is my thing? You can always find it on Facebook at the Almost Daily Zencast page, but it's also being distributed to the following pod services: Podchaser, Podcaster Addict, Deezer, Castbox, Google Podcast, drumroll please, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Big league. Big league. So tell your friends, and you know what I need? I need the Almost Daily Zencast street team. You guys know what I'm talking about? That's old school, right? That's like from real oldie time radio days. If you know what I'm saying, kids, when I was your age, the internet was only wave files, and you had to tune in to special frequencies and know the secret code. And radio shows would have these volunteer teams called street teams. I think this would be considered like too radical now. I don't know, Trumptopia. Is this too weird? But hardcore fans of the show willing to virtually, they would be like social media teams. Like, don't go out on the street and do this. That's scary sounding. Get out on your social media and make a little extra effort to give the Facebook page for the show some love and share the episodes that you like, that you think are good entree points of entree, episodes that you think, this episode right here, it's nice and short, he rambles, but he doesn't go off the rails, and I think my friends would like, I think I can get into this show because of the way it came out, right? That episode was golden. Pick that episode, figure out whichever one you think that is, and like, tag some friends in it, share it at your thing, tell your girlfriend to listen, ask your oldie-timey folks, what do you think? Here's this boomer trying to be cool on the interwebs. He's your generation. Is he crazy, or is he is he speaking some radical things worth investigating? And as always, folks, remember, disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. This is A, me being honest, genuine, authentic. This is also B, excuse me. That's going to be edited out in post. Gesundheit. Salute. Bless you, myself. Salute. I will not get sick. I did have a second round of family influx, you see. And no matter what, germs are everywhere. And when people you haven't seen in a really long time, even if it's only like 3 weeks, show up, they're dragging all kinds of gnarly living things on their bodies. And nobody likes to talk about it. No one likes to think about it. But I refuse to get sick. What was I saying? Let me wrap it up, folks, and come back to a different episode of segment time to break up my thoughts. I am, as I move forward into 2020, I am under the impression that all natural, organic, cosmological, quote-unquote, signs are pointing to this is a sweet spot. Now is the time. Take a running start. Take the momentum that was already cycling up last year, reinvigorate it now, organically. Maybe get a little crowdfunding account going with the best. So I need recommendations, sidebar. Which crowdfunding platform should I use to crowdfund this show into a better place? A place where, like, not only can I focus on it, but I can pay contributing content contributors. If you're going to let me use your song, I might not be able to pay industry standard rates, but if you're an undiscovered musician and people like your song, I want to give you a little something, right? Well, that takes a little something coming in. If we've got to deal with the, quote, free market, I've got to, make the magic happen, do what I really love to let that money flow in and stop thinking about money as, all the ways that I think about it in terms of it being blocked from my sphere of bounty and influence in the magical world that is a living fractal holographic womb of life matrix. So, if you like what I'm doing, and you've been listening to the show, if you're new to the show and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Let's all band together as a collective of audience and show to get the show and its numbers back up on that growth trend right here, right? And I ask that of the universe and of you, dear listeners, with humility. Despite whatever madness I may sometimes come off as, deep down I know what it is to be humbled by circumstance and acts of God, and I know what it is to choose to be humble through sheer force of will, and I know what it is to fail at both those things, or attempt to recreate those things. And I do ask with the deepest of humility, help me get that show to the place where it's actually commodifiable for me, and I can make this, talking to you, the hustle that empowers me to make other art and to eventually leverage myself into being a job creator, right? Because that's the goal. I don't want a handout. I want to be a job creator because people like my products, and I can hire other people to help me make my products even better. The show will be tighter, faster, less rambly, more entertaining, with a more diverse range of voices, because, its original vision is a panel discussion show. I'm just the host. There's just no panel because I can't afford to pay them. Help you help yourself have a better podcast experience by helping me help this podcast go crazy viral. And now, I should have done this like 30 minutes ago. Here's Trap 111, DJ Zedd. Tune in for more. The almost daily Zencast. Good morning, Trumptopia. And other topics coming soon from the mind of the incorrigible Mr. Zappa.